so I lost mine a couple of years ago, but he carried her in and out. Good morning, sweetie.
How are you?
I'm good. He carried her in and out from my very business hours, but he carried her in and out. Her legs didn't work.
I had to get a hippie harness for my dog's back legs.
Hold the back leg it up.
Obviously, get around.
We get the
last few
straddle
weeks.
pile with that, you know.
Yeah.
But
Try to keep things, but about 75 pounds. You can rip it to around.
I just finished watching. So we would move her from room to room wherever we were, and then when her face was sad, and it was just, it was,
Yeah.
but she was a good dog.
That's how we work. All he wants to do is be in the room with us. You can't follow us around room to room.
They give so much love and attention and kindness, and all without asking for too much.
It's the first for my kids having to deal with all that.
Yeah, that's hard.
Morning.
Morning.
Aaron Wadley.
I know who you are. I saw you, Warren Money.
Good morning.
I saw you make a really wonderful presentation begging for more money for the county commission.
For the courthouse?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Then I noticed the name, but
I'm excited to work with you guys.
the presentation was really good.
Appreciate it. At some point, it's just, you gotta say it's old, it needs work, so.
Did you ever hear anything from the company about the prior renovation work that you were actually pretty good?
The county sued them and got almost $900,000.
Really?
What do you do? This is 2004, I think, when all that went down. They did the renovation in '02, and the problem right now, honestly, the county didn't touch it in 20 years. If you don't maintain a building for 20 years, you're gonna have a lot of issues.
Actually got some money out of it. So I was thinking of it after what you were saying.
So they actually got more money out of it than this project's cost. I think they're in pretty good shape now.
Well, 900,000.
No, the other bid we had, the other bid we had was almost $1 million.
Yes.
Already change orders,
I heard one statistic, I asked Martha, who knows more than me, and then I didn't think, what do you think the cost of the scaffolding was for this present project? 75.
By the time it's erected and you rent it for a period of time,
they budgeted 45,000 and it's delays, they're up around 70,000.
But I've asked a few people that, and I'm getting 10 grand, no one's come close to 40.
no, when you look at that, in a normal range of project, you should budget about 40, 45.
It actually moved 2 inches, you had to have the scaffolding company come back out and tighten it up. It moved in the windstorm. Yeah, it's on that sloped roof and you can see where it slid. You
But
get
the
up,
county never took responsibility for hiring a ship architect in the first job.
yeah,
Never.
they still aren't taking responsibility for the architect.
They hired a bad architect and who has a good reputation, but he's a crap architect.
Did you solve the VE issue?
They're gone.
For now, coming out of there for a couple of years.
I had they'll be back, but we've sealed off everything so they can't be back like they were. If they find a way. But I had a beam removal company come out. And he came out, the painters were up there working, and he looked down and he said, I don't think you're gonna have a problem more than spray paint. I was like, he said, I'm okay, but
You're making a presentation today.
yeah, hopefully it's brief. I mean, there's a map up here.
I got a long list of, there's a binder required.
I'm ready for it. So y'all moving to the new building, or y'all staying where you're at?
That was one of the, we had moved down to the fire department a few years ago. When they, gave me the anticipated planning meetings out, that was.
You're in a pretty good setting where you're at.
We moved over to have less space, which is frustrating. Not body space, but less storage space, and that became kind of an issue. So we had to, but that's okay.
Everything's digital now, why do you need to?
Yeah.
Good morning, how are you? I'm good, how are you?
All right.
My cupcakes are here, it's been taped over. Exactly. That's what
There
I
are
was
no
afraid you
assigned parking
responsible.
spaces. There is only one person in this whole city who has a parking space.
Yeah.
One person.
I used to.
And that would be the judge at the county. We've marked this space off. Everybody else is parked.
I decided I was going to shoot the city hall.
It doesn't come out of profit, it comes out of Carroll.
When you take this space, you hear about it.
Yeah, I've been looking at my reindeer. I ain't going out.
This is the point, my first that I bought for people that are irritated me, so. Forgot to resolve that clarification.
June or July, we'll be glad we remission we had.
They're very equivalent services. But they maintain a certain degree of and they're almost always white men. Almost always. Sheriffs too, and that is because they're constitutional. And I said my authoritarian, I feel like they're above the law themselves. They often get compromised because of that attitude. If they compromise themselves, or they wouldn't have someone else compromise, they sometimes they're compromising. Because we were talking about why why is the sheriff?
You go after John. Your report is after John.
Good morning, we're gonna call our meeting to order.
You don't understand the sheriff?
They don't function like the police chief does. They think they're something, a totally different animal.
I would ask please, if you have cell phones, please turn them off this time. Like the work work session and call council meeting thereafter. We will stand and we will have pledge of allegiance by Council Member Lathan and prayer by Council Member.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you would like to pray with us, would you please remain standing? Dear God of us all, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the grace. We thank you for the mercy. We thank you for favor. We thank you for the agenda that has been set before us on today. We ask you to allow us to make decisions based on behalf of the citizens of Madison, not our own merit, but on your supernatural powers. We ask you to allow us to open our spiritual eyes so that we may see as others see through their lenses. We ask you to allow us to hear what other people need in this community. We ask it all in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. We have a pretty limited agenda this morning for our work session, and we certainly have a big day planned ahead of us, so I would ask those who come before that they could be as brief as possible this morning. And at this time, we will call on our city manager, John Clem, street superintendent Aaron Tewksbury, and our engineer, Aaron Watley. John.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We will try to be brief, but we're here to answer any questions that you may have. I originally had assumed that we would be really dealing with infrastructure and roads during the budget, but there is a requirement to apply for annual state funding in the LMIG program. And so we considered a few roads, and we had to have an application forward by February 1st. And in so doing, it just made sense to put an overall plan together. So I'm going to introduce Aaron Wadley, who's our civil engineer that is working with myself and with Aaron on this plan. There's nothing mysterious or magical about this, but this is a plan that both our professional department head and an engineer put together after traveling around the city, looking at the condition of all of our roads, and putting a plan together that makes the most financial sense in terms of getting the best bang for our buck. Now, unfortunately, there are other roads that we could all name that probably should be on this list as well. And ultimately, this is a council decision, so we're making our professional recommendation to you, but it's up to you if you wish to alter the recommendation. So, but why don't we start, I'll ask Aaron Wadley to briefly give a summary of the roads that he believes should be in the next fiscal year roads plan, and we can talk about each one if you'd like, and he can explain why the road has appeared on this list. Aaron?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. So let's talk with this year in mind. See, we have roads all over the city, not in every district, but most districts. We chose these roads for a reason. One is the current rating. They rated low, we're in bad shape. Two, they're near another road. As you can see, we have a group in the around the square that we're doing. That saves the city money. They're all roads that are going to need to be resurfaced in the next few years. And if we can get them close together, you're going to get better prices on your resurfacing. Cities pay a lot more than counties do for resurfacing because you have a lot of short roads. It costs significantly more. So anytime we can get them close, you guys will save in the long run. But that takes a plan. So we're looking a few years out, trying to see what's going to need to be accomplished over the next few years. We've also taken some equity in this as well, make sure that there's no neighborhoods that are left out. So I want to draw your attention to the two roads in yellow on the map. Those are roads we're looking at for next year. When John came in, he wanted to look at pavement preservation, and that is a way to get ahead without traditional resurfacing, doing other things to save the roads, save money in the long run. To do pavement preservation techniques, there's a lot of treatments we can do that can be anywhere from a third to half the cost of traditional resurfacing. But to do that, we've got to do some work up front, do some crack sealing, things just to keep water out. It has to be done about 12 months ahead of schedule. So we're trying to plan ahead. It's not something that many local governments are doing, but this is our effort to plan ahead. Ultimately, I think we'd like to have a 5+ year plan for resurfacing so we can begin to plan further ahead, get things in place that need to be done to do other treatments in the future and ultimately save the citizens money. We also have two roads in blue on here, Thomason Street and Lakeview. We don't know what bids will be. To be honest, they've been astronomical the last few years and they keep going up. With a recession in place and some changes in construction, we may see some better pricing this year, but petroleum has stayed high, which will probably keep asphalt high this year. I know most of the contractors that I work with already have full books, which tells me that they're probably going to keep their prices elevated. But if bids come in low, or if we don't have as much patching and repair work to do, we may be able to do some treatments on those roads. You'll notice that the two roads in blue, Lakeview and Thomason in the square, aren't on the financial list that I gave you guys this morning because we don't know what we'll be doing. We'll be looking at the money that's available and maybe doing some repair work or some crack sealing to prepare for the future. But we'll have to see, based on the budget we have remaining, what we can do on those roads this year, if anything. With that, do you have any questions about the list in front of you? Anything that I can answer for you all?
I just wanted to add that I've had several conversations with Adam Mestris in the county, and he's offered, they spend a tremendously higher amount on roads every year because the county's much larger. And he's offered to consider working collaboratively to put it up to bid. Now, there's some pros and some cons of that. And that is, we don't want to give up our ability to not choose a contractor that we have had a bad experience with. But at the same time, as Aaron mentioned, there are cost savings the more you do. So there could be a cost savings too. So that door has been opened up. We haven't made any decisions or commitment, and I would come back to the council on that, but I just want to, I appreciate Adam offering to work with us on that.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, Aaron, I had a question on the Jones Alley. We looked at that yesterday. It's got that big old tree stump encroaching. You got a plan for how that's like 2 or 3 feet into the right-of-way there, the road?
The plan would be to pave around it. We would have to mill down where the roots are actually coming up through the asphalt, but short of taking the tree out, we just have to pave around it. If we try to cut the tree back, it'll kill the tree, and you'll have other issues. It's a problem that's systemic throughout Madison with our historic trees all over the place. But it's just something we got to deal with when we do it.
And then on, I believe it's Fairgrounds Road down by the Humane Society. I was talking with John yesterday. I guess there's some, well, I know that was patched fairly recently. It didn't look like much improvement, to be frank. That's not on your list, it looks like. Is that future ideas on that?
Yes, sir. So that was actually Aaron Tewksbury's first road that he wanted to look at. Fairground in its entirety needs to be resurfaced. It would take more than half your annual budget to do it. It's long, it's over a mile. And actually the southern portion between Lions Club and Antico is in worse shape. And would need to be partially reclaimed. About the first 500 foot going into the Lowe's parking lot just has truck damage. It was never designed to handle the loads that it handles on a daily basis. And then there's some water issues further down. But the entirety of Fairground is, it needs to be addressed.
And we know that, at least in one section of Fairground, that there's proposed significant industrial development. And so with that, we wanted to pause, because it isn't just a matter of resurfacing. We're going to have to widen that street for the trucks to be able to come in there. So it needs a much more long-term and comprehensive approach. So I suspect you'll be seeing that in the next couple of years come forward.
And the last question I had, if you could give me some rough idea of, are we talking all LMIG money for these projects, or some of it T-SPLOST revenues, or where are we on the finance?
No, the funding for the roads program are T-SPLOST and LMIG. LMIG's about 60 grand a year, so it is a relatively small percentage of the overall roads program. But our funding source right now is twofold, T-SPLOST and LMIG. And we're going to have to address that issue, because although in a general sense our roads aren't terribly out of step presently, but there's a life to a road. And so you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that in 8 to 10 years, if we don't step up the program, that we're going to hit a wall where a whole bunch of roads are in poor condition, and we need to address it. And so as we talk about long-term funding, we have to, I think, recognize that we're going to have to start putting more money in the future into roads, or we're going to hit a wall at some point where a whole bunch of roads are going to need immediate attention, and we're not going to have the funding source to do it. So the $400,000 in a nutshell that we spend is what we have this year, but it's not adequate going forward into the future, the next 8 or 10 years. We're going to have to step that up.
And I guess associated with that is coming up with a strategic plan, which road are we looking at 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever.
I mean, residents should be able to say, I mean, if they call and say, I live on this street, when are you going to fix it? You should be able to say, well, the bad news is it's not going to be this year, but the good news is on the plan, and it's going to be in 2025, or whatever it is. So we're mindful of that.
Are there more questions for John, Aaron, and Aaron? If not, John, thank you and your team for this report this morning. City-owned parking structure, possible sites funding, et cetera. Councilmember Joyce.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how this started in my mind, but it just seems like I think at some point as we talk about long-term stuff, 5 years and 10 years out, I think we need a parking structure or a larger parking lot, and we probably all agree to some degree on that for the downtown. And I think we sort of were like biting off little teeny pieces of it here and there, the lot next door here, the police department lot, you know, an improvement if we have more parking, but it's certainly not anything approaching any real solution. So as I was looking around, it occurred to me, and I wanted to posit an idea, and that is the current site that DDA owns that is underneath Adrian's is going to be removed. Now, I know DDA probably has plenty of plans for all that property down there, but I was looking at it, there's I believe about, and Ed can probably weigh in a little later here on this, but I think there's maybe 5 lots there, right behind the ice house, going down to the Point Park, which is the liquor store. And even the one lot that is now Adrian's, I think it's 0.4 acres. I'm thinking, well, you know, that's kind of owned, DDA owns it. I know they have other plans in a parking lot, but that location is not ideal for, I mean, no one's going to park, if it were turned into a parking lot. I realize there's issues, there's grade issues, the only way to walk would be up from West Jefferson to the tracks, but it would help shoppers in the town park area. I don't think people will be parking there and walking up to barking dogs, but it would help our merchants and our retailers in the park area, plus provide parking for activities that Karen wants to put on in Town Park. Right now, I know we had, Madison Fest is coming up, I believe in April. I just saw that in April, and all those 40, 50 vendors are told to park down at right below what is the new Martha's parking there. Well, when that gets developed next year, 5 years from now, whatever, that parking is removed. So it just seemed like an opportunity. I think generally what I'm saying is, as land becomes more expensive around the downtown, it's not going to be any cheaper than it is now. So I would like to figure out some plan, if you all kind of agree that we need to work on a parking solution, a plan to perhaps identify which plots that the city owns, that DDA owns, that's privately owned, and maybe come up with sort of a strategy for how we can acquire those for parking. I might add too, we mentioned T-Splosh there. T-Splosh, I believe it was the county financial manager predicts that the current T-Splosh will cap out at the mandatory dollar cap by June of this year. Fortunately, the new one was passed, and I believe that's I assume that's at the end of the first one. So that would be a four, maybe 5 more years of T-Splosh revenues. But bear in mind, T-Splosh passed by about a little over 100 votes out of, I think, 8,000 cast. So there's no guarantees that 4 or 5 years from now, when it expires, that it will be renewed. So the revenues that we have now are good for 4 or 5 years, but maybe not after that. So certainly spending money on a parking structure, not necessarily a structure, even a parking lot. We have revenues through T-Splosh, so now might be a decent time for that. But I think the main thing is I would like to figure out a way that we can identify an area that might be amenable for a parking area.
So, Councilman Missouri, would you have a problem with allowing our council to ask staff DDA, the staff to look around our city to see where we can have designated parking, and they bring us their report back of what they find.
Not only would I not have a problem with that, I would encourage that. I think
Good.
that's one of the possible.
If staff don't mind looking into that, Monica, but y'all,
We have a parking strategy. Well, we're probably, I'm sorry.
It's not.
I'm sorry about that. Actually, there is a parking strategy. It's not fully articulated in a plan, and I think that's maybe why you're having questions about what that strategy might be. And so we certainly can do the research and show you what that parking strategy is for right now. All the sites that are for surface or for vertical have already been identified more than 10 years ago. And so
Both public and privately owned now.
both public and privately owned, and the transition in ownership or constructive ownership of thereof, along with the number of spaces. And then we did a calculation on the amount that would be required in the normal zoning, as well as the amount required by the transition of occupancy in the downtown. So we actually do have that, but if the failure exists that it's in an articulated written document that you could source. I'm more than happy to start picking all those details out from the different pieces that we have and putting them in a single document and making sure that the council has that to be able to guide policy making in the future. What we're missing for downtown parking is funding. I'm just going to say that, funding.
Tease pause. So let me ask Ed a question. If I could ask Ed a question on the specifics of that one idea I had, which may not be a good idea, but I realize DDA does not plan to put a parking lot in there. If the majority of this council says, this is something we want DDA to do for us, to sell it to the city at whatever value works for you, what would the DDA response be to that?
I can't speak for him now because, you know, I'm not on DDA. I just tell you personally, that's not the best use of that land, and we would be leaving lots of dollars on the table.
So I have two comments on that. One is it would undermine the plan's intent to respect the historic district, and that would be a huge concern for me. We have cottages lining one side, and it undermines the very basis of the plan was to create a better entrance into our community. On the flip side, I would also offer that the plan as presented was carefully balanced to have the correct amount of parking for that specific area. So it has enough to serve that area. Our deficits in parking are in other areas. People will travel and typically walk about 220 to 400 feet from a parking spot to a retail location. So in a long-term strategy, we would want to try to identify those resources that are closer to the retail environments that have the deficit, not put it where we already have a surplus. So two things. Preservation probably would be the highest priority. Aesthetics would be the highest priority, and actually defraying the $2 million debt. That would be the second highest priority. And then the third priority would be to put parking where we actually need it. But there will be some more parking that's coming in that area. So on the triangle, I think there's another 35 or 40 spaces planned. I believe there is around another 50 planned for the area back of the depot. And then there's another 45 planned for the innovation area. So there should be some more parking. You're just not seeing it on the ground yet. It's on the plan.
The DDA lot right past the depot is planned to be for parking?
Yes, sir. I mean, so if you're looking at the depot,
Yeah.
there's supposed to be a parking lot on either side. And then if you're looking at McDowell, there's a parking lot down there. And then if you're looking at the innovation area, there's a parking lot here. So there's about another 100 congregate spaces that'll be within the vicinity of the depot that aren't there yet. And then the triangle where Martha's is now, there's another 35 that are engineered to fit on that lot. So about 135 spaces that are on the ground. What is not going to be built as part of the plan anymore is the extra 75 spaces that we had embedded in a potential structure, and David waived that off. He said we didn't need it, didn't want to fund it, and I'm not trying to ditch that. It's just that that became a lower priority when we were negotiating the land deal, because David didn't feel the pressure for parking in that area. Not commiserate with the financial cost of it. So the deal was cut without that. Right. Well, the best thing to do is kind of let us provide you a follow-up report that shows the mapping. For years, the focus has been to work on quadrant parking. Quadrant meaning a spot in each corner of the downtown, so that you're meeting that walking distance requirement that most people are adhering to. And so we probably just need to, like you said, have a strategy that's articulated, but maybe put it on paper so that people can see it. Because I had to sit down with John and explain it all when the agenda item came up, and it's all there. It's just not articulated on paper, and we probably need to not miss some other opportunities that as they come by.
Thanks,
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Real quick. I do agree with Eric that we do need to look for parking, but I think it needs to be up here somewhere, because our stores up in this area need it. I'm not sure where we can find it. Maybe sometime we can work with the county, because they got a lot of parking over there behind the courthouse. And I think that would be a good strategy, Eric, and I totally agree with you. And if we can get parking on this side, and we need to get active doing that. So I am in agreement with you from that standpoint.
Thanks.
So I think maybe let's give staff an opportunity to come back to us what they think our parking needs to be, and then we could go from there. Thanks, Monica. Thanks, Eric.
Thank
and,
you.
A conflict of interest, recusal. Our attorney's not here this morning, so we will not talk about
Yeah,
that.
it's kind of pointless without him.
He is with us. Our city manager report. And John, as I said earlier before we started our meeting, and I don't like to do this that often, but no, we have a busy day planned today. We got to be back into this room at 11 o'clock for, I think, the golf cart meeting. And staff has to come in and reset this room for a meeting this afternoon, so I would ask each participant, if they would, to be as brief as possible.
Too late.
Exactly.
Okay, I have 7 or 8 brief items, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I just wanted to mention to the council that we've kind of implemented a new approach. We get calls quite regularly about flooding and drainage. And because growth is occurring and more developments occurring on more marginal lots, I suspect that that's going to continue into the future. Someone's going to build a home on a marginal lot and then come to the city saying, you've got to solve our flooding problem. So what we've done is we've implemented a plan where when we get a call, I have Aaron Wadley, our roads engineer, go out, and this recently happened. We have an individual or family who's been complaining for years to the city about their flooding problem, and in fact, they have a significant flooding problem. But Aaron Tewksbury went out during a major rainstorm and just watched the flow of the water or whatever, and unfortunately, or fortunately, the problem is not being caused by the road and by the runoff. It's being caused by development above this person's home. So I have Aaron prepare a memo, and we send it to the property owner or whatever, and then we'll follow it up or whatever. But I just think that we're going to hear more and more about drainage and flooding or whatever, and so I wanted to implement something that it seems much better to answer the person, even if it's not, I mean, that's not what folks want to hear. Folks don't want to hear that the city's not responsible. And in some instances, we are responsible, and if we're responsible, we need to own it and try to do something about it. But we're having a higher level of review now.
So, John, when you tell them that the city is not responsible, what's their reaction? Do they continue to come back to you over and over again and say, hey, this is y'all's responsibility? How do you?
They do, and we'll continue to meet, but the one thing that they can't they can no longer say is that we're not being responsive. They may not like the answer that we're giving, but at least we're taking it seriously and reviewing it. And as I said, there's some issues that are our issues that we need to address. And so every complaint is taken seriously, and that's our approach.
So,
Second,
excuse me, so when a council member get these kind of complaints, then they probably will call their constituents first. What should our council member say to them? Go to our city manager or?
yes,
or
you
what?
can say that you'll refer it immediately to the city manager, that he is an engineer that'll go out and look at the site and respond back. Second issue, you probably heard the issue of 2 trees that are going to be removed at 543 North Main Street. That's been on and off again, and Ken's done a great job putting the news out. It's actually on for next Wednesday, so we implore residents that don't have to be on North Main Street on Wednesday to kind of stay clear or whatever, but there's only going to be a very short period of time where the whole street is being blocked. Most of the time it'll just be 1 lane, but it's going to cause a problem next Wednesday. And so I just wanted to mention that to the council, because you'll probably get a call or 2. We continue to work on our stormwater plan. We have initially mapped all of the drainage infrastructure in the city and whatever, and we're going to be proposing phase 2 in next year's budget, but we've got to put a long-range stormwater management plan together, which includes a revenue source to address that issue. State of the City address, March 9th. We're getting excited about that. We certainly not only want every councilor to be present, but we certainly would hope that you would take the time to invite your closest friends and neighbors to come out. It's going to be it's going to be a nice event, a celebration of the city, and we want all of our community to participate in that. We were just named one of the most beautiful towns in America several weeks ago, which is a wonderful thing, and the question I think always need to ask ourselves are what are we doing to preserve that? What are we doing to maintain that? What are we doing to improve that, to make Madison even better? The auditors are back in town, which is good news, because we've had issues with timing in the past. They were in this room this week or whatever, so we'll be getting our audit much quicker than we did in previous years. At 11 o'clock today in this room, we have a motorized vehicle town meeting. Folks can come in and ask us questions and hear from the chief and Philip Malcolm about what the ordinance says. And I have a project update to hand out to you.
Okay. Are there any questions for John?
Just if I could add real briefly, the state of the city that John mentioned is going to be at the auditorium at the Cultural Center, which holds, I believe, 300 is the capacity.
Or more, yeah.
So invite everyone you know. It'd be nice to get at least half the capacity in there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, John. Jennifer Rosa, the CBP Director's Report.
Can you all hear me okay? Okay, perfect. Well, thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me here. So my name is Jennifer Rosa, and I'm the Executive Director of the Madison-Morgan County Convention and Visitors Bureau. We are presenting our mid-year status report. We're on the same fiscal year as your all's city. So this is for July through December of 2022. Okay, perfect. And I know that, of course, you all want us to be brief. You have a busy day. I always like to just start with our board so that you can know who helps with our governance and really lead our goals, as well as our team. That might help. There we go. As well as our team who helps market Madison, as well as keep our Welcome Center open those 360 days a year. And really, I always like to start with our mission. We are the official destination marketing organization for the city of Madison, so our goal is really to help boost economic vitality and development by inspiring tourists to come, stay, and take part in the local tourism economy. So we really exist to be your marketing arm. And through that, I'm going to show how we've been fulfilling our SMART goals so far this year. We follow the PESO model of marketing, which is paid advertising, earned media, social media marketing, and owned assets, and investing and really promoting each of those areas to help show our brand. And we're going to start with our paid advertising with our results for our website. So our SMART goal for 2022-23 fiscal year is to utilize digital content activation to target contextual keyword travelers and destination competitors with the goal to increase paid visitors to visit MadisonGA.com by 30% over the previous year's paid visitors, which is equivalent to 13,000 visits. And what's important to note about how we're doing our metrics is because travel was the hardest hit industry by the pandemic, we're not comparing ourselves to previous years, as we knew that there would be about a 3 to 5 year recovery, but we're actually comparing ourselves to pre-pandemic numbers. So for this, I'm showing you all numbers from the 18-19 fiscal year, so you can see not only have we completely recovered from our pandemic dip, but we're actually performing better than pre-pandemic. So with our website visits so far this year, we're already at 46,000 website visits to visit MadisonGA.com, which shows a 28% increase over that same period for pre-pandemic. We're also very high on page views and session duration. What those numbers show, especially session duration, it's not just quantity but quality. So you'll remember one of the first things that we did when I took on leadership and as we were going through the pandemic is we really invested in our online presence. We created a brand new website. It's much more robust than it was pre-pandemic. It has a lot more content, individual pages on our attractions, itineraries, just it's so much more helpful for visitors who are trying to discover what is Madison and why would I want to come and spend money there. So with our session duration being up almost 60%, that's showing that it's working, that they're engaging, that they're staying long on our page, that they're clicking through different pages instead of coming onto our website and just clicking out. So that's showing that the quality is doing well as just our quantity improving. I always like to show just a few examples of some of our top performing posts. Every month we'll create 2 to 4 different trip inspirations or itineraries or just different information to help inspire tourists to want to come here. So some of our top performing in this part of the fiscal year were Small Town Christmas, Haunted History, and our top 10 fall articles. And it's always nice because you never know, sometimes it'll surprise you what you put up that connects with people versus what you thought might have performed better. Next, we're going to go into the next step of our PESO model, which is earned media. This is our public relations. You know, we've really been investing more in PR in trying to show Madison through the media, through the eyes of the media. And with that, we've increased our investment in it, and it's one of the ones that shows the highest return on investment. So with our earned media, with our PR, our SMART goals are to earn 5 individual media visits that we host, which we've already secured 3. We're doing a group press trip, which we have slated for the spring. And then also to generate 150 million impressions. So that's millions of views of the articles that are out there talking about Madison, promoting Madison. You'll note we're already at 61% of our goals with impressions, and that ad value, we're going for $150,000 in ad value. We're at 83% of that goal. And you'll note that our investment is not even 20% of what the ad value is that we get out of our PR. Some of the wins that we've had, which I'm sure you've probably seen, and there are a lot more than these, but what those numbers actually look like, for example, are the great article that we had right before Christmas in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution on small town charm from a media journalist that we hosted. We were noted in HGTV as one of the 10 design-oriented American small towns in the nation. We were noted in MSN for a journalist that we hosted, and also Travel and Leisure. So not only are we really winning within our drive market, which is our main target, but we're getting national note, which we're really, really proud of. The next area that we focus on is our social media marketing. So our SMART goal for 2022-23 is to engage audiences across platforms to grow followers and increase impressions of organic and paid marketing. And there's really 3 different platforms that we do that, which is Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest. So we'll start with our Facebook. So we have goals on increasing followers and also an impression, so how many people see our post, our organic post, and our paid campaigns. We've already almost met. We're at 99% of our increased follower goal, which is a 3% increase that we're going for to get up to 12,550 followers. And for impressions, we're right at 50%. Those are paid impressions, so we have a strategy where we invest equally over the months. Next is our Instagram, where we're really, really focusing on increasing those followers by 9% over the year, which we're projected to actually surpass our follower goal for Instagram, which we're excited about. And this is a newer one for us. So Pinterest is something that Explore Georgia is very excited about. It not only hits potential tourists when they're learning about places in the awareness stage, but also in the planning stage. People love to plan their trips, to pin ideas on a board, to understand or to try to determine where do they want to go and what do they want to do there. So this is the first time that we've really invested in actual paid targeting through our Pinterest account as well. And you'll see from our numbers, this is when we're still trying to learn how to create our goals and how to engage people more. So we've surpassed our goals for views and for audience. For audience, amazingly, we've done almost 400% of our audience goal. But our engagement is not quite where we want it to be. That's something that we're going to work on and learn so that we can get people to not only see what we're doing, but what connects with them to actually want to click through, to pin it, to engage with us more. So that's always one of those things that we're trying to learn and get better at as we're marketing. I always think it's fun just to see some of our top performing posts on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest, because again, sometimes they surprise us as well, what you think might do well versus what really performs well with engagement and people getting excited to learn about it. You'll see it's always kind of just that small town charm that makes us different and historic and unique. And our final part is going to be our owned assets. So that's our website, our welcome center, etc. So we'll start with our welcome center. For our welcome center, we're really focused again on quality. So in maintaining that 5-bubble rating on TripAdvisor, and we've done it. We are still #1 out of 15 things to do in Madison. We've welcomed almost over 5,000 visitors so far this year, and we really pride ourselves on providing a wonderful first face and interaction with our guests whenever they come in. And we're excited to be the #1 thing to do and most highly rated on TripAdvisor. Next is our e-newsletter. Y'all may remember we just launched this last year. It was our first ever e-newsletter. And our SMART goals for our e-newsletter are to increase subscribers by 20%. We exceeded that goal with an actual increase of 40%, and also to maintain an open rate above the industry average, which we're over double. So our open rate is 53%. And you'll see in the little bar graphs, green is where we were at the beginning of the fiscal year, and then the dark green is where we are now with the industry standards in red, or our goals. And just an example of our Christmas newsletter that went out. We actually have over 1,000 subscribers already. And this is just a little extra news that we're excited to share. This is a big win for us. So we are, again, we have been able to be recertified with the benchmark of excellence through the Georgia Association of Convention and Visitors Bureau. It's a 3-year certification, and we're gold certified, so we are at the highest level. So this is administered through the Leadership Institute at the Columbus State University in partnership with the Georgia Association of Convention and Visitors Bureau. So GACVB has over 100 members. And basically when we go after this recognition, we submit our marketing strategy, information on our governance, on our bylaws, on our finances, just so much, even our HR practices, to let them understand kind of how do we work and how do we try to be above and beyond in our performance as a Convention and Visitors Bureau. We're one of only a dozen organizations out of over 100 GACVB members that have earned the certification and we're at the highest level. So this is really a big win to just, the work that we do and the professionalism that we try to put into our organization. And with that, that's everything that I had for you all, if you all had any questions.
If I could, Mayor, congratulations on the gold certification. That's great, and the work you and the CVB do. Either last work session, maybe the one before, I presented my encouragement that that your awning be changed and that we get a Wi-Fi, that public Wi-Fi is able to reach into the little micro park next door. Two questions on that. Number one, do you agree with both those objectives? And number two, if you do you think that's a responsibility of the CVB and your budget, or is it something you think the city should be providing for you?
I absolutely agree. I think that both of those are very smart ideas. And Monica Callahan has actually met with me. So since the city owns the building, that's something that is in their budget. It's something that I know is in the 5-year update, different investments that they have. So I know she had already picked out we had picked out the type of awning that's going to be there, and I'm just waiting on the coloring information that they have. So that's something that she's actually worked on. And I can't remember, I think you said you were planning before tour to have it replaced. So like before April?
So I'm assisting with getting the awning contractor here and selection of it. I'm not so sure I promised who was paying for it, because that's a Karen Stapp conversation, but I am assisting with the replacement and getting it done before the tour.
Okay, so then that one's news. And then for the other one, for the Wi-Fi, the Karen Stapp has been managing through, is it BD, or it's a IT company?
Yeah, it's between our BD managed IT and infrastructure technology. We're trying to figure out how the internet and Wi-Fi is all linked with the buildings. And I've already been told that yes, by all means they can have it in the building, so visitors can see.
Sounds like progress on all fronts. Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course, no problem. If there's any other questions?
Thanks for keeping us updated. Appreciate that so
Thank you,
much.
well done.
Monica, proposed lunch and learn discussion topics, along with your report.
Yes, sir, and I actually will try to keep it to just that this morning. I've got 3 topics that I wanted to hit briefly. One is, so we've had deferred public engagement because of COVID. I think we all know that we kind of dialed back as hard as we could, not because we didn't want to serve the public, but because we didn't want to put the public at risk. But now that we're all emerging from our shells, we're trying to get back into public engagement this year. So we've got 3 things that my office is working at putting on the calendar. This does not mean this is the final end-all be-all, but this is the framework where I work in, so we don't pile up on your obligations all on a single month or a single day. So I'm going to pass this around and just briefly go over it. And so this is a what I call is a planning calendar. It means we're mapping out the year. We're trying to figure out when we're staging certain things. It also means that I can plan activities a month in advance. And so I just kind of want to briefly go over those 2 things that we're doing. So one is with our local leadership training. We usually do a fall event. We usually focus on zoning one year and legal and ethics the next year, so we're going to continue to do that in the fall. In spring, you know, Karen Robertson certainly handles our volunteer appreciation, but we're going to add a spring training this year, so we'll alternate between the 2. So the spring training this year that I had already budgeted for, but we hadn't decided what it was going to be, we're going to focus on teamwork building. We have around 49 volunteers who are unpaid employees, in my opinion, that do a lot of our planning for us. That's our Green Space, our Downtown Development Authority, our Historic Preservation Commission. If you've been and watched those professionals work, they provide great service to the city. So our spring exercise, we're going to have probably Carrie Barnes from EMC come, and they do the training for free. We do have to pay for a kind of a modified personality Myers-Briggs test. You've all done that in leadership training. I can't say that elected officials have been skipped in that kind of evaluation. So we're going to do some team building in spring, and in the fall we'll go back and do our ethics and board management training governance as normal. So those 2 dates are on there tentatively. You'll see those in hot pink. So that's how we're engaging our civic leaders that are appointed, and those represent engaged citizenry. This summer, we're going to roll out what we had hoped to do during the COVID period, where we have our community planning workshops. If you participated during comp planning, these will mirror those, held in churches, usually because they have the facilities, inside the neighborhoods, 1 per district. We'll ask the mayor and the manager to come to all of them. We'll ask the district reps to certainly be at your activity. And the purpose of those is to engage the citizenry and listen and hear what their concerns are. We don't want to have more town halls where we take input and do nothing. So they're actually not quite town halls, so we wanted to avoid kind of pitching them as that, but more planning workshop, roundtable discussion, problem solution oriented, and elected and appointed officials being there to be engaged with members of the public, 1 per district. We're planning this, to do those all during July. So if you have a specific date in mind, we just assigned them districts 1 through 5, but if you have a conflict, let me know if that doesn't work for you, and we may see if we can swap you out. But we have to plan those well ahead if we want the public to attend, okay? We'll also be doing some assertive engagement. We find that with sometimes our either our minority populations or with the disenfranchised populations, we have to do community notice a little differently to be able to get engagement. So sometimes door-to-door hangers, sometimes bulletin boards in churches, but just a little bit more coverage than the normal. Put it on social media and put it in the newspaper. That just doesn't garner citizen engagement, all right? So you're welcome. So that's both leadership development of our appointed boards and engagement at the local level. The third prong of engagement that we want to try to do this year is, I was having a discussion with John about how that it would be more beneficial sometimes for staff, or maybe even perhaps from the council's perspective, if we could have moments where we had learning moments and education moments and could focus on a specific topic, like perhaps downtown parking. So we were talking about how we used to do that. Probably 4, 5, 6 years ago, we still engaged in occasional lunch and learns. So we want to kind of get back into that habit. And those are moments where, if you haven't done that before, Betsy, since you're the relatively newcomer now, staff would provide lunch. The council, usually on a Friday, and we spend an hour, hour and a half, and we hit a specific topic. And that topic is not specific to planning. It's not Monica's lunch and learn, right? So it might be a topic that the council puts on the table. John has preemptively given me 3 that he thinks that are very important for us to engage in some discourse. And then you might have a department head that has something specific that they need to put on the table that they feel like it would behoove everybody to have some informal, unstructured conversation. We're talking about holding those at the Chamber of Commerce Economic Development Room. Discourse happens differently behind the dais to the public, around a work session table like this, and around a conference table. And if you'll remember, the lunch and learns used to be held around a conference table. The discourse is totally different. So we're going to try to get back to that. If you'll notice, those are on my calendar as yellow, or kind of a soft gold. I chose tentative dates. They're on Fridays after consulting with Ashley, and they all say TBD because the manager's going to set the topics. I've been collecting a couple, and it may be that you want to generate a couple, but I aimed for 6 out of the year and avoided the months where they're already heavy or holidays or travel-oriented. Yes, sir.
So let me ask you this, Monica, probably our council members as well. If we're going to do a lunch and learn, how can we coincide this with work sessions? Just make it just one meeting. Can we?
I think the point is not to coincide them. Because the work sessions are not working for discourse. And so we're trying to get to a different dynamic that would allow for a different form of engagement in discourse. When we started off having work sessions, they typically were 1 or 2 topics. And just looking at your agenda this morning, you can see that the work sessions are really not functioning as work sessions. They are functioning as second meetings per month now. And so if we really want to hit a specific topic and have meaningful dialogue on a specific topic, we need to concentrate on just that animal. And we find that y'all come if we feed you. So we promise to feed you, and we promise to make it painless and turn you loose in less than an hour. And again, it would be if you had interest in coming. They weren't always mandatory. I know Rick remembers when we did lunch and learns pretty regularly. They weren't mandatory. It was if you had interest in that specific topic, you could come and get questions asked and answered, and maybe having some discourse between the council members that was in a more informal setting.
Okay.
More like a conversation instead of a meeting. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Okay.
Yes.
If I may, but this also includes public.
Absolutely. These meetings are open to the public. They're not participatory. There's a difference between an open meeting and a public hearing. So, yes, the public can come and sit around. I'm not feeding them. But yes, everybody, anytime we're doing the public's business, the public has the right to come and watch. And so this is just a different format for the council to get some consumptive information.
Mr. Mayor, just one question for Monica.
Sure.
You've already canceled our September 29th?
Yeah, there's a reason for that.
That's okay, Monica. I just, it was,
Is that, yeah. So we tentatively put 6 dates on here. And then I went over with Karen, BOE education moments where you're out of town with children, because I don't have kids and I don't think about y'all traveling like that. And so we have one on there that might not be a good date, so that one is the fudgy date. So look at those dates, see if they work for you. There's nothing magic. We tried to choose last Fridays of the month because they were easier to remember. So again, 3 forms of engagement we want to get back to this year. The first one is with our appointed officials. The second one is with the public at large in their own natural environments. And then the third is a stepped-up education moment for both staff and for the council to engage in a conversation. And so those are the big ones. I also wanted to briefly, Mr. Mayor, if I could, just give you a brief update on grants, and then I'll be done for the day. And I can also release y'all. Y'all got a lot of other things that got planned on top of today. We don't have to go down to Adrian's today. If y'all would like to not do that, that's okay. I'm not feeling like you have to do that. You're not going to hurt my feelings. And so if y'all want to defer that to another meeting, that's okay. I'll leave that to your discretion.
I think we should go.
Okay. Well,
I think we'll have
To
time.
Ed's question, the 29th is also a work session. Maybe that's why it was.
that may be why. We looked at overlaps, and that one was the one that got a little weird. So just briefly on grants. CDBG groundbreaking is next on the 7th for Boys and Girls Club. So I just want to remind y'all that is at 1 o'clock. You'll get an email reminder, but they did send out RSVPs. And I'd like to encourage you to support the Boys and Girls Club with that, since that's a pretty hefty grant. You're going to be hearing about that on your regular meeting coming up. I've got an item for that. The RDF is supposed to be submitted Monday. We'll see how that goes. That is for the tear down of the Adrian's and the liquor store. Our RDBG, we are receiving great support letters from downtown merchants. and that is for the downtown lighting grant that we're submitting. So we're getting a lot of community support letters. I just wanted to thank everybody for participating in that. We are moving toward our first processing of payments on our TAP grant. So we're making good progress on the first trail and sidewalk grant. We have put out the RFQs for the 2 sidewalk projects that are Carmichael Drive and Canaan area. So those 2 are now out on the website. We'll be expecting responses to those. The next 2 will go out in 30 days, and those are for over by the school system and Vine Street and that area, Eric. So those will be the next up. So you'll see all 4 of those. We'll be grading and scoring and coming to you with contracts for those back to back to back. So all those are prepped and ready and out for bid. Or RFQ, I should say, not bid. And then the last is your ARP grants. For the DDA was distributing that for nonprofits. I'm happy to report that all of that money has been distributed to your nonprofits that were providing humanitarian relief and engagement, except for Habitat. And Habitat is at probably a 80% draw. And I will remind you that one of the reasons they might not be at full capacity draw is we did further kind of tweak that a little bit and say that it really needed to be spent on something that wasn't going to benefit just a single homeowner. It needed to be equipment or something like that that could continue to serve them in their mission to provide housing to the community. And so they're not at full draw, but that's of no concern. I just wanted to let you know that the DDA has responsibly distributed those funds. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is to thank you for coming to the Canaan Crossing opening. It was well received. It went really well. And I'm very grateful for the housing that they provided. One of the startling numbers that was said that day, if you weren't there to hear it, I wanted to repeat that. So they have leases on all 60 units in place. And they have their waiting list, they're cutting it off essentially because the waiting list hit 200 families. And that should give you a feel of the scale of demand for workforce housing.
And just before Monica leave, Monica always in the background. She never likes accolade, but she and her team did an awesome job of putting this river cutting together.
Well, there was a whole professional group that did that. We just showed up and smiled. But I appreciate your remarks, Mr. Mayor, and Carrie, appreciate you being there, and you were very well received. And if you did not get to hear Ms. Benford and see her unit, she was so proud, and she was a wonderful representative of Madison and Morgan County speaking about affordable housing.
Absolutely. Thanks, Monica. Great report.
Can I say one more thing, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
It was amazing to hear Andrea, who actually went to college and went and lived
Yeah.
and had a daughter. I mean, it was amazing to hear her say she wanted to come back to Madison, but she couldn't find where to live. She allowed us to go inside of her home. So it was amazing. If you didn't come, you truly missed it.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Robinson?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Mayor and Council. You all have a copy of the Main Street Quarterly Activity Report there in front of you. I am going to zoom through this because you have this for your reading delight at a later time. Just a couple of things. Of course, we closed out the last quarter of the year with a plethora of events, which are listed there. In parentheses, you'll find estimated attendee numbers. It's almost a challenge sometimes to get exact numbers of our attendees at events, but a very close estimate of those attendees at each of the events that concluded the quarter, which kept us very busy at the end of 2022. We kicked off 2023 with a coffee and conversation with our downtown businesses. It's something we did in partnership with the local Chamber of Commerce. Excited to do that. That's something that I began when I started with the Main Street program and thought it'd be great to partner with the Chamber to begin doing those moving forward. Monica mentioned the terminology of lunch and learns with Mayor and Council, as well as for the public consumption to come and view. We'll also be doing some of those training opportunities with downtown businesses as well. We found that they have requested support in the areas of how to better market their businesses and solidify their teams with some social media use, so we'll be collaborating on bringing in expert training around those areas. Some upcoming events are listed there. We have 3, and as Councilmember Joyce mentioned, Madison Fest is on April 22nd. One I did not list that I would very much like for you to put on your calendars for a save the date. It is listed on the planning calendar, which Monica shared with you, is the Volunteer Appreciation Event, which is going to be on Thursday, April the 27th, and it will be here on High Street next to the meeting hall here. So kindly put that as a save the date on your calendars and look for more information to come regarding that. I combined November, December, and January numbers here, just since it's been a few months since I've been before you with a full report. So in terms of building rehabilitations for November and December downtown, you'll see those numbers. A couple of the things that I wanted to bring to your attention in that area, that in January, we're beginning to see some permits be issued in the downtown around some of Preston Snyder's properties, some of his residential work that he's doing off of North Main Street, as well as the incoming convenience store, which is located across from the Main Street and Planning Office. We've all been taking a front eye view of that progress happening there across the street. Property sales. In December, there was a transition and sale officially that hit the books for James Madison Inn, which is included in that number, along with Bell Park Loft sale, and a local residence. We don't have any numbers to report at this time for property sales in Q Public for January 2023. In terms of new businesses, we didn't have any new businesses and didn't have any closures between November and January. However, I have already received some new business permitting applications for the patisserie, which is owned by Preston Snyder. We're excited to see that come online. You all know that the dining room opened in the fall of last year, and so it's a wonderful location. I hope that you'll have an opportunity to have a dining experience there. I felt like I wasn't in Madison when I dined there, and so it's a fantastic location. Please take an opportunity to enjoy the visit there. We also are noting that there was a temporary pop-up store with the boot store that was located on North Main Street, and they now have a permanent location that will be coming in on West Washington Street, where the former McGinnis Realty was located. So be on the lookout for that. Also, just in terms of program activity, you'll note that in November, December, we sold over $14,000 in downtown dollars on last year. And so incredible time for sales and to push that money and funding back into our downtown economy. One facade grant was issued last month, and that was to Algin Realty. We have been working with them for quite some time to get this grant completed, and so we're happy to say that we're able to put that check physically in their hand. That concludes my report. I'm sure I'll have other things that I'll be coming before you. I know we're working on some other events, and my main focus right now is getting sponsorships for all of our signature events. The council has graciously supported all of our events, which create vitality and placemaking in the downtown, but we've had several businesses to say that they are unable to be signature sponsors. And so that's kind of hitting home to Colleen and I. So I'll be working really hard to get some signature sponsors secured. So if you have any ideas or thoughts that you'd like to share with me about businesses that I can approach, I actually do have 2 gentlemen that are going to be kind of helping me who are local businesses, and so I'm hoping through that relationship that we'll be able to solidify some sponsors. So any questions for me, Mr. Mayor?
Just thanks for what you do for downtown.
Yes, sir.
You hear her name a lot around downtown, and we certainly appreciate it.
I certainly hope it's all good,
It's
Mr.
all good.
Mayor.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'll tell you the other stuff later.
Oh, okay. I look forward to hearing it. Tell me the dirt later.
Well, that ends our work session. At this time, we will go into our call meeting. Anybody needs to take a quick break before we go to our call meeting?
Do we need to adjourn the work session and then?
We don't have to adjourn. It's just a call meeting.
It's 9:38.
Yeah, well, we're gonna be brief, hopefully.
2 minutes.
Sure. Come on up, Karen, and we'll give Best a couple of minutes.
Good morning. I have Carrie Wilkins here with Treadwell and Tamplin, and she is going to do a brief overview of the fiscal year 2021 audit that was finished and submitted. First, I just want to thank Carrie for everything that she's done over my tenure with the city. Over 20 years? She has been the auditor, and I appreciate everything that her and Treadwell and Tamplin have done for us.
Okay. Good morning. I'm Carrie Wilkins. I'm with Treadwell Tamplin CPA, and I'm here this morning to review the audit report for June 30th, 2021. The audit report was submitted to the Georgia Department of Audits on December 31st, 2022. The most important information to know about the report is that the city received an unmodified opinion, which we refer to as a clean opinion. That's the highest level of an opinion that you can receive. So that just means that we have reviewed your financial statements and we believe that they are fairly stated. The next important item to note is there were no audit findings reported. So that's good news as well. In addition to the financial statement audit, there was an additional audit required because of the amount of federal grant expenditures during the year. Whenever a government expends over $750,000 in federal dollars, a single audit is required. During 2021, the city expended approximately $953,000 in federal grant dollars. The majority of that was the Airport Improvement Program grant, and the other grants were related to COVID relief funds. So with that federal money and that additional audit, it requires additional testing, additional reporting. We found no problems, and there were no findings reported in that audit either. The financial highlights from the report: general fund ended the year with $1,207,000 in unassigned fund balance. When you compare that to total expenditures for the year, that's equivalent to about 3 months of expenditures. So your fund balance is within a healthy range. The city stayed within budget for the year. We performed compliance test work on SPLOST funds, T-SPLOST funds, hotel motel tax funds, and we just make sure that the money has been spent according to the referendum and the intergovernmental agreements. We didn't find any problems there. The city met the debt coverage ratios on your bonds. So, we greatly appreciate the cooperation we receive from management and staff, and they do a great job for the city.
Thank you so much, and it has been a pleasure to sit and work with Treadwell and Tamplin audit firm as well. Y'all have been good to our city, and we thank you so much for what you've done for us in the past. We're going to miss you.
Yeah.
And Karen, you have any questions or anything that you would like to say? I mean, it looks like everything is in order and we're good to go.
It is, and once again, thank you, Carrie. And you're right around the corner. I might be calling you from time to time.
We've met with the new auditors and provided, any work papers or things that help with the transition, we've met with them, and, you know, we're working to make it as seamless a transition as possible.
Yes, the new auditors were here Monday through Wednesday this week, and for Tuesday, they spent some time down with Carrie, and she helped them out.
Are there any questions for our auditor?
I believe, Mayor, you and Rick are the two audit committee members to represent us, is that right? Did you, either of you have any comment further than what you just said?
I think when we meet and have our audit committee meetings, everything is always above board. There's nothing to hide, and as you said, this morning, our city is in good shape, you know, so we're pleased with that. And we have a good audit committee who really works well with our auditors, you know, and we're okay. Rick, I'm not sure.
I echo those sentiments indeed, and we'll move forward, but miss Carrie and her team.
If we could get a motion and a second to approve this audit committee report.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposes, none. This report is approved, and thank you again so much. The city clerk emailed to us a copy of the resolution that GMA is asking all cities to adopt. And once this resolution is adopted, they're asking our city to send them a copy for their file. And they're asking us to place this resolution somewhere in our council chamber. So have you had a chance, have all our councilmen had an opportunity to read the resolution?
Mr. Mayor, there are two resolutions on the agenda tonight. The first is for surplus property, and then you're speaking about the civility resolution,
The
correct?
stability resolution, yes.
Just wanted to clarify.
Is this the items that are currently in the temporary city hall? The 25
Miss-
file cabinets and chairs and whatever?
Mr. Mayor, can we do the surplus equipment
Yeah,
first?
sure.
Okay,
I'm
so
sorry,
yes,
am I jumping ahead here?
No, this list is items currently in our temporary city hall that need to be declared surplus for us to sell on GovDeals. These items are items that we're not going to be taking with us when we move into the new restored city hall. And so instead of putting them in storage for years and years, we would like to just go ahead and get it sold on GovDeals.
As a coffee brewer, Mr. Mayor, I know you have a special affinity for coffee. You might want to jump in on that.
We have upgraded our coffee machine after, so I can't even tell you how many years.
Mayor Perriman wore that one out.
No, I've seen you in there getting coffee too.
I would move to accept the surplus items list for transfer into the, you're using GovDeals? is that it?
GovDeals, yes.
Second.
Are there any more discussions? All in favor, show of hands. Opposes, none. We will allow Karen, if she would, to put that out.
Thank you very much. And one announcement, I don't know if anybody is online, but today, 3 o'clock, and then this, starting in this meeting room, we will have the rededication for City Hall. Okay. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Okay. Now back to the resolution. We could talk about it, if you would, read them. And if you're okay with those resolutions, we can certainly adopt those at our next council meeting on February the 13th, I think it is, at our council meeting.
So the resolution was on the agenda, and then I sent it yesterday. But we also have our LMIG application that's up for approval as well.
Have what?
LMIG, the FY 2023 LMIG application up for approval.
Was that in an email, that document?
Yes.
I don't think it's an attachment, at least not in the
I'm sorry,
agenda.
my new computer and nothing has gone as planned.
Yeah.
It's actually in the work session agenda. It's a one-page document. What this is all about is that the cities in Georgia every year have the right to apply for transportation funding or whatever, and shockingly, a high percentage of cities, for whatever reason, every year don't apply. So I asked Aaron Wadley just to pick the 3 most obvious roads on our roads list and apply. $60,000 is not a lot of money, but we had to meet the deadline or whatever, and thanks to our professional staff here in Tewksbury and Monica Callahan, we have the capacity, unlike other cities, to make sure we get our applications in on time. So that's what the request is before you. Cornwall Drive, Jones Alley, and Reese Street. We could have picked any of the roads on the list. It's just a request for $60,000 of state funding.
And we could put this on our consent agenda for our next meeting.
You can actually approve it today because we're not called.
We're in a called meeting, right?
So if I could get a motion to
We could
approve
get a
that
motion
application,
to-
if you all are ready, we can go ahead and do that.
Yeah, yeah, I second.
And most discussion, all in favor, show of hands. Opposed, none. The lead mayor is approved. Thank you. Anything else to come before our council this morning?
Mr. Mayor, would you prefer we approve the resolution or wait until the next meeting since
Have all
it
the
just got
council members
emailed
had
out
an opportunity
yesterday?
to read those resolutions?
On civility?
Yeah.
I didn't get it.
You didn't get it?
You came in a different email.
It came yesterday.
We could do it at our council
I
meeting.
probably got it, but I didn't see it.
Oh.
But if everybody else has looked at it, I trust my fellow council members, except for Betsy.
There you have it. Thank gosh.
Has everybody else had a chance to read it?
Yeah, I read it.
Yeah,
It says you got to be nice to me more, Ed.
Well, then I'm against it.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I would be
And it
too.
says I don't have to be civil at all.
But what's the council discretion?
Yeah, let's
Okay,
take
if
care
you're
of it.
ready,
I'm
let's-
ready to vote.
Okay.
I move to accept the resolution on civility as presented.
Second.
There is more discussion. All in favor, show of hands. Opposed is none. The vote unanimously, and our clerk will get that ready for us. We
It's
have to
ready now.
sign it.
Yep.
Let's sign it.
She's going to drive us down the road. You've got to know that, Mr. Mayor. Listen.
And we would ask her if she would
So
to,
that's the surplus, but that's only me and Fred. And then
ask
this
if
is
you
the-
would you send a copy to GMA once it's signed,
Yes, sir, I will.
and also get a frame to put the resolution in to hang somewhere in our city hall.
Mr. Mayor, if I
Yes,
might,
sir.
just one last thing. The only thing that would concern me on this is why do we need a resolution for us to be civil to each other?
Well, a lot of cities are not. It's a good resolution.
If I knew I had to be civil to you, Eric, I would have amended that thing. Miss Mayor, it's right there in front of you.
You got a blue pen, Rick? No,
sir, I don't.
I don't have.
Here's one.
Send it all around to me. You don't have to be, yeah, you're,
That's Ed's pen.
yeah, this meeting is adjourned, they're just signing some documents, yeah. I'm sorry.